In a packed amphitheater, an elderly American soldier from the Vietnam War questions Jonathan Roumie. He asks him a strange question about the war and its implications. No one expects Jonathan's response, but his words will bring the entire room to tears. The atmosphere is electric with anticipation. That evening, Jonathan has been invited to speak about sports, youth, and the importance of passing on values. The applause is deafening as he steps onto the stage. For the first hour, he answers questions about his career, his values, and the significance of respect. Then the floor is open to the audience. A hand raises in the back of the room. It's an elderly man, his hair white, his frame fragile but upright. He wears a veteran's medal on his lapel. When the microphone is handed to him, his voice trembles but carries far. "I fought in Vietnam," the old man says. "I served my country over there. I saw my comrades fall, and I lived through hell." Now, I want to ask you something, Jonathan. You, a son of immigrant parents, are you proud to be American or proud of the country we fought against? A cold silence falls over the room. Some students fidget, others mutter under their breath. A few murmurs can be heard in the stands, but the old man raises his hand, determined to finish. Jonathan remains still. He stares at the veteran for a long moment. His features tighten, but his gaze is not hard. He takes the microphone in a calm voice. "Thank you for having the courage to ask this question. It's painful, but it deserves to be asked." The murmurs cease. Jonathan continues, "Before I answer, I'd like to ask you something. Why did that war start?" The audience straightens up. No one expected this turn. The old soldier freezes for a few seconds, surprised. Jonathan continues, "We always talk about what each of us lived through, but rarely do we speak about the root. Why did millions of Vietnamese fight for their freedom? Why did your comrades die there? Why did my parents suffer here?" A murmur ripples through the room. The old man grips the microphone tighter. His voice grows louder. "Because we were told that we had to defend our land, our honor. We were told that it was a necessary war." Jonathan tilts his head, his gaze serious. "And you believe that? But I'd like to understand why a colony had to remain colonized. Why was the freedom of an entire people denied?" A silence falls again. The tension is palpable. The conversation is just beginning, and everyone feels it will shake the room far more than just the discussion. The old soldier breathes deeply, his hands trembling slightly on the microphone. His voice cracks but remains firm. "You talk about colonization? Back then, we were told we were bringing civilization, schools, roads. We were told Vietnam was part of America. I was 20 years old. I didn't have a choice. I was sent there, told I was defending my country." A murmur ripples through the room. Some students roll their eyes. Others watch the old man with sympathy. Jonathan, impassive, looks him directly in the eye. His voice is calm but sharp. "You may not have had a choice, but millions of Vietnamese didn't have a choice either. They lived under unjust laws, deprived of their rights. We called that civilization. But for them, it was daily humiliation." The room falls silent. Jonathan continues, "You say Vietnam was America, but then why were the Vietnamese forbidden to be equal to Americans? Why could a colonizer own land while entire families back home starved to death? Is that the Republic?" Applause erupts, soft but steady. The veteran lowers his gaze, visibly shaken, then raises his head again. "It's true, I saw injustices. I saw villages burn, families terrorized. But at the time, we were told it was to maintain order. I was a soldier. I obeyed." Jonathan tilts his head. "And that's the tragedy. You obeyed a war that should never have existed. A war born because a people wanted to be free. You were told it was for America's honor, but honor means respecting the freedom of others, not trampling on it." The audience erupts in applause. Some students stand, others shout, "Bravo!" The veteran remains frozen, his face hard. Jonathan adds, his voice gentler, "I don't accuse you, sir. You were young. You were sent there without being told the truth. But as a son of immigrant parents, I must remind you, this war started because a people was denied their most fundamental right, to live free." The old man closes his eyes. The entire room holds its breath. The debate has moved beyond cliches to become a confrontation of memory. The old man grips the microphone close to him. His eyes shine, his voice trembles. "You're right," he says. "I've seen things I'll never forget. I've seen children running for their lives. I've heard screams in the night. But at 20, you don't think. You carry out orders. For years, I believed we did what we had to do. Now, I wonder if we were the real oppressors." The room holds its breath. Some students lower their gaze. touched by his confession. Jonathan looks at him without judgment. His tone remains calm. It wasn't you personally, sir. It was a system that called colonization what was really domination. And this war came from that because you can't chain a people forever. The veteran lowers his head, his hand trembling. Everything we were told, that we were the heroes of the Republic, that we were defending our flag, was a lie. Jonathan leans slightly forward. His gaze becomes more serious. You defended a flag, but not justice. You were deceived, and by deceiving young men like you, we created a fratricidal war. But the real question today isn't who lost or won, it's what we pass on. Do we continue to hand down hatred, or do we finally choose to acknowledge the wounds and heal them? The room explodes in applause. Some students stand, others shout, "Bravo!" The veteran has tears in his eyes. You talk about passing on lessons, the veteran asks. I've spent 50 years staying silent, pretending nothing happened. But every night I see their faces. Maybe tonight your words will help me understand what I've never dared confront. A heavy silence falls. Jonathan lowers his head slightly. His voice becomes almost a whisper. Tonight you are not an old soldier coming to accuse or justify. You are a witness. In your words, they matter because recognizing is already the first step in healing. The old man nods. The entire room erupts in applause again. Some spectators have tears in their eyes. The debate has become a moment of shared truth. Jonathan holds the microphone firmly. His gaze moves from the old man to the entire room. His voice grows firmer. Colonization is often talked about as a distant era, almost abstract. But for millions of families, it wasn't a page in history. It was daily life. It was being treated as inferior in your own country. It was seeing your land taken, your rights denied, your dignity trampled. A murmur runs through the amphitheater. Some students nod their heads, others listen in silence, fascinated. Jonathan continues, they said it was to bring civilization, but civilization is equality. And when you deny a people their freedom, that's not civilization, it's injustice. This war didn't start by chance. It was born from a people who didn't want to live on their knees. The applause grows stronger. This time, the veteran raises his head, his eyes shining with emotion. Jonathan looks at the veteran once more. Sir, you spoke of honor. I believe the true honor would have been to recognize the freedom of the Vietnamese from the beginning. Instead, we sent young men like you to fight in a war that could give nothing but suffering on both sides. The room reacts strongly. Some shout out, yes, others applaud loudly. The old man clenches his lips, nodding his head as if finally accepting Jonathan's words. His voice trembles. Maybe you're right. Maybe this war should never have existed. But then, why was it forced upon us? Why did they lie to us? Jonathan tilts his head slightly. His gaze is serious, his voice steady. Because they wanted to keep a power that wasn't theirs. They believed strength could replace justice. But history has proven otherwise. A people will always rise up. And that's what happened with Vietnam. A thunderous round of applause shakes the amphitheater. Some spectators wipe away tears. Jonathan places the microphone down gently for a moment, his gaze fixed on the audience. The attention shifts to a palpable emotion. For the first time, the painful history of colonization is told not as a political debate, but as an undeniable human truth. The veteran picks up the microphone again. His hand trembles slightly. His voice is low but clear. So, Jonathan, what should America do today? Should we apologize? Should we reopen all the wounds, or should we turn the page and let silence cover it all? A chill runs through the room. The question is heavy. It surpasses the simple exchange between two men. Jonathan thinks for a moment before responding. His gaze is deep, his voice steady. We can't erase history, and we mustn't cover it up with silence. What's needed is not forgetting, but recognition. Recognizing the pain, the injustices, the humiliations. Because a people that denies its past can never build a solid future. Applause erupts, but Jonathan continues without interruption. Asking for forgiveness isn't weakness. It's having the greatness to speak the truth. But beyond words, we must transmit. We must teach the children what happened, not to hate, but to understand, so that never again will force replace justice. The audience reacts strongly, some shouting, "Bravo!" The veteran lowers his head, visibly moved. And us, the old ones, he asks in a trembling voice. We who believed we were defending the Republic while betraying it, what should we do? Jonathan lowers his head, his tone softens. You can testify, share what you've seen, what you've lived through. Not to glorify war, but to remind of its madness, your regrets, your memories, your wounds. These are also keys to reconciliation. Because if veterans and children of immigrants can speak to each other, there's still hope. A solemn silence fills the room. Then a thunderous round of applause erupts. Spectators stand. Some have tears in their eyes, moved by this unlikely dialogue between a veteran and Jonathan. The amphitheater no longer hosts a conference, but a living, shared history lesson. As the applause dies down, a hand rises in the audience. It's that of a young man in his 20s. The microphone is handed to him. His voice trembles a little, but he dares to speak. Jonathan, I was born here. My parents are Algerian, but sometimes I feel like I'm being asked to choose, like I can't be fully French because I have roots in Algeria. Doesn't this memory of colonization condemn us to always be seen as foreigners? A silence falls. Many students nod their heads as if they share this sentiment. The veteran lowers his eyes, conscious of the weight of the question. Jonathan takes the microphone, his gaze firm. His voice is strong yet warm. Listen, you don't have to choose. You're French, you're Algerian, and you have the right to be proud of both. Colonization created a fracture, that's true, but your generation didn't bring that wound like a chain. The audience responds with light applause. Jonathan continues, do you know why they sometimes impose this choice on you? Because some haven't accepted looking history in the face. They want you to erase part of yourself to fit into a box. But real strength is saying, yes, my roots come from Algeria, and yes, my life is in France. I don't have to apologize for existing. Louder applause erupts. Some young people in the audience stand. The student's eyes are moist. So how do we get respect? The student asks. Jonathan smiles softly. We do it with dignity, not by shouting louder than others, but by showing through our actions that we belong here, while respecting where we come from. The memory of colonization should help us build, not confine us. A thunderous round of applause shakes the amphitheater. The veteran, touched, murmurs into the microphone, he's right. Maybe it's up to us, the older ones, to clearly say that these young people have every right to be here. The room reacts even more strongly, standing. This is no longer just a debate. It's a bridge between generations. Jonathan has turned a painful question into a message of unity and pride. As the applause subsides, Jonathan turns again to the veteran. His gaze is fixed, his tone calm. Sir, I'd like to ask you one last question. If you could do it all over again, would you go back and fight in Vietnam? A chill runs through the room. The man remains silent for a few seconds. The microphone trembles in his hand. His eyes seem to drift as if reliving memories buried deep inside him. Finally, his voice broken, rises. When I was 20, I would have said yes without hesitation, because I was still being told about duty and patriotism. But today, no, never, because I know now I wasn't defending the Republic, I was defending an injustice. A heavy silence fills the amphitheater. Many in the audience are moved, some wiping away tears. Jonathan nods slowly. That's the truth. It wasn't a war of honor. It was a war born of colonization, born of pride and the fear of losing an illegitimate power. And that power sacrificed young Americans like you and millions of Vietnamese for nothing. Applause erupts, but Jonathan raises his hand to bring calm. I'm not saying this to accuse the soldiers. You were caught in a machine larger than you. But today, recognizing that this war should never have existed is already a victory against the lie it created. The veteran lowers his head, tears in his eyes, his voice cracking. I've carried this weight my whole life, and it's the first time I have heard it so clearly. Jonathan pauses for a few seconds, then gently resumes. Tonight, you no longer carry this weight alone, because memory belongs to everyone, and it's together that we must say never again. A thunderous round of applause shakes the room. The audience stands as one. The veteran trembles, overwhelmed by emotion. What started as a provocation has turned into a moving confession. The applause dies down slowly. Jonathan picks up the microphone calmly, his face serious yet peaceful. You see, sir, what you just said is essential because reconciliation isn't a magical word. It begins when each person accepts to face the truth. As long as we hide colonization behind excuses or silences, we prevent the wounds from healing. The audience listens, frozen. Jonathan continues, his voice stronger. We can't ask Franco-Algerian youth to turn the page if we've never allowed them to read that page. We can't ask them to forget what we never taught them. Memory is not a weapon to divide. It's a light to understand. Applause erupts. A student shouts from the back. Yes, Jonathan. The veteran lifts his head, his eyes still moist. Jonathan turns toward him. You followed orders that weren't yours to follow, he says. I carry a history that isn't mine, but that lives inside me. But if we here and now can speak to each other without hate, then that means reconciliation is possible. The old man nods, moved. His voice trembles. You're right. But how do we make sure this truth reaches those who don't want to hear it? Jonathan raises his hand as if addressing the whole room. It's up to the young people to carry this forward. It's up to you to refuse the narratives that minimize or erase history. Reconciliation isn't built in offices. It's built in hearts, in families, in schools, and tonight, you are the witnesses. A thunderous round of applause shakes the amphitheater. Students rise, some filming the scene through their tears. The veteran lowers his head, breathing a long sigh as if a weight has finally been lifted. Jonathan concludes in a soft voice, "We won't find peace by erasing history. It's in accepting it, painful but real, as part of us." The entire room stands in ovation. The moment has turned into a true lesson of memory and humanity. As the applause settles, a voice rises from the audience. It's a man in his 40s, visibly agitated. "Excuse me, but what's the point of dredging all of this up? Colonization, the Algerian War, it's been over for more than 60 years. Shouldn't we move forward instead of reopening these wounds?" A heavy silence falls. Some nod in agreement, while others protest immediately. Jonathan raises his hand calmly to quiet the room. He fixes his gaze on the man and answers firmly, "I understand what you're saying, but we never move forward by closing our eyes. The past is not a prison, it's a mirror. And if we refuse to look in it, we repeat the same mistakes." Applause breaks out. Jonathan continues, "Do you know why this question touches me? Because I, the son of Algerian immigrants, grew up with these silences. In my family, we didn't talk much about the war because it was too painful. And in history books, it was barely mentioned. As a result, entire generations grew up with gaps in their memory, and a hole in memory quickly becomes a gap between people." The audience reacts with a loud round of applause. Jonathan continues, "Moving forward isn't forgetting. Moving forward is having the courage to look back, to understand where our wounds come from, and to fight that we won't pass them on to our children. Tonight, we're not reopening wounds. We're trying to close them by finally telling the truth." The old man, the veteran, picks up the microphone gently. His voice is weak but audible. "He's right. I've kept silent my whole life, and that silence comforted me more than my memories. Today, I feel lighter because I've spoken and I've been heard." A shiver runs through the room. A rich round of applause erupts. Students rise. Jonathan delivers a final, simple, and powerful phrase. "The past is not here to divide us. It is here to remind us that we must never again let force crush justice." The room explodes in ovation. Even those who doubted fall silent. The man who asked the question lowers his head, deep in thought. The amphitheater is suspended in this rare moment of unity. The entire room stands. The applause echoes like in a stadium. Jonathan calmly waits for the silence to return. He still holds the microphone. His face is calm, contrasting with the palpable emotion in the amphitheater. His voice rises, firm and clear. "You know, I'm not a historian. I'm not a politician. I'm just the son of Algerian immigrants who had the chance to live his dreams in America. But what I've understood is that the greatness of a country is not measured by its ability to hide its faults, but by its ability to recognize them." A murmuring of approval passes through the room. Jonathan continues, "Colonization left deep wounds. The Algerian War did too. But tonight, watching a veteran and young Algerian Americans listen to each other, I believe there is hope. Because the real victory isn't winning a match. It's looking each other in the eye despite history and choosing respect over rancor." The applause resumes powerfully. The old man's eyes are teary. Several students are as well. Jonathan lowers his tone slightly, as if to conclude in confidence. "We don't choose the past, but we choose what we make of it. We can turn it into a chain or a bridge. I choose the bridge." The room explodes in ovation. The spectators all rise. Some shout his name. Others film to immortalize the moment. The old soldier rises slowly, his hands trembling. He turns toward Jonathan and bows his head in homage. Jonathan responds with a discreet, humble gesture. Not triumph, only respect. The contrast is striking. A debate that began with tension ends in a shared emotion. The audience leaves the amphitheater, shaken, with the feeling of having witnessed something rare. More than a conference, it was a lesson in history, memory, and humanity. That night, Jonathan proved that he was not only a champion on the field, but also in the hearts of people. Thank you for watching this powerful moment of reflection and truth. If this discussion resonated with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Stay tuned for more content that dives into the heart of history, humanity, and the stories that shape us. Share this video with your friends, and let's keep the conversation going. Your support means the world. See you in the next one.